Jumping into this one right about now, it is going to be the exact mirror in terms of the first items too. Let's see where they're going to be going.
Oh, do you think they communicated in chat like, hey, let's go this to start off?
Same items, same runes, same
Otherwise, it's
summoner
not fair.
spells. This is identical right here.
I also love that they go the lethal tempo. Okay, so the things that you can express in terms of skill is that you can utilize the blight stacks nicely if you operate successfully. Looks like neither of them really prioritizing that right now. The other thing is with the passive for Varus, right? You get the extra auto attack speed for killing minions. If you can stack that up nicely, that will be good. And then of course the usual of spacing and the things that AD carry players like to do. So that's what we're looking for here in this matchup. And right now it's Scout that's winning out.
And who do you think between these two is someone who's going to have played a lot more Varus? Because I would expect that it would be Scout as a mid laner who's ended up playing more Varus than top, but we have had Varus top before, as they take a big chunk of damage out of each other. Cube actually coming out quite a lot behind in this one. He has been chunked way down at this point.
Oh, that piercing arrow would have hurt. As that's 2 points in the queue for Scout right now. Yeah, the top Varus was fun. You got the Jack. I mean, as a top lane main, I did play that a little bit. Maybe abuse is the better word for it. When you go to Jack show and you're pretty unkillable, not necessarily as powerful anymore. As yeah, Cube getting very, very low. He's gonna have to at least take a base or something here, and that would mean big advantage over to Scout.
Really is, because like I said, we've seen a lot of these towers just going down early on more than anything else. So if you're able to get yourself a good chunk onto this tower, take a couple of plates, that'll put you ahead in terms of items as well. And also the benefit of being pushed up in these lanes is that you can take your opponent's relics as well as being able to take your own. It helps you to keep that health advantage very much so during the early stages. And you can see it here, coming back with just a dagger right here for Cube, whereas you've got a full pickaxe for Scout. He's going to be in a significant advantage now once they start hitting each other again.
That's a big item differential. And also Cube didn't even decide to go back and regenerate all of his HP because he needed to get back to lane as fast as possible, which means another HP advantage going towards Scout is looking a little cooked if you're a WE fan. I'm not going to lie here. Scout needs to really misplay, or Cube's going to have a crazy moment here. Scout's actually the one who hits level 6 first. He throws out the Chain of Corruption, waits for the bone plating to expire. Cube flashes away from the blight procs of the piercing arrow. Scout waiting for those cooldowns to come back off of cooldown.
Ooh, well played.
But will not be able to find any more blight stacks here. Cube had 3 of them sitting on him for a while, but did not get any of them procced.
It was a well-played fight there from Cube. Oh, unfortunately, he just takes that last piercing arrow there because he was in a little bit of an advantage. Considering the deficit of items that he was in, it was well played to start that one off. Now he's going to obviously have that level 6 advantage for a little while, but summonerless, quite low health. He's going to be having to play a lot of dodgeball right here to make sure he doesn't just get taken out. Good flash.
Scout, he flashed away from the Chain of Corruption. This should be a kill. That's first blood. That's one of the 2 needed here for Scout. And it's not going to be the end of the 1v1, but it does give him a big chunk of gold, and that's a huge win here for the mid laner of JDG.
Yeah, massive for Scout to be able to pick that one up. Obviously, he's very low health at this point, so he's going to be trying to push this wave through as quickly as possible, get a recall off, spend a little bit of gold. Interesting to see if he's going to have enough in his back pocket to be able to come back with that first item completed, because if so, it's going to be awful to try to play out right here.
For a plate too.
Yeah, he's going to stick around for the plate. I don't blame him. If you can come back with that first completed item, you're just going to be in such a strong spot to once again just walk right here at Cube. Especially with your ultimate coming back very soon.
It feels so bad. Look at him. He's 1,200 gold up.
Yeah.
How are you ever supposed to win? He's got a full bork.
Yep.
What are we doing?
Yeah, this is unfortunate. This one is pretty much done. I've seen people mess up from this position, take an inopportune recall, have your full tower taken down. You know, there's opportunities right here potentially for Cube to be able to get himself back into this one, but it's going to be very, very unlikely, it must be said.
We need some severe outplays for Cube. That's not a good. That's not a good start.
No. Chains of Corruption is back up right here for Scout. He's still got a little while left until Cube is going to have that one back available. Doesn't have the flash either, so if he gets tagged by that one, will most likely just be taken down. Like I said, the Bork is going to be in the back pocket of Scout too, so he's in a very dominant position in this one. You can see it here. Cube can't even step to the minion wave.
And if you're Cube, you almost have to wait for the Ring of Fire to go down, because if you do kill Scout beforehand somehow, you'll burn like all of your cooldowns. You'll be really low HP. You're going to have to take probably a tough reset as well. And that means that you're just right back to even, and Scout will have all of his cooldowns back up, he'll have an item advantage and things like that. So for Cube, it's looking tough. Another wave crashing in. He's gonna have to do something at some point, otherwise his tower will actually go down before the Ring of Fire closes in, as those plates not as strong as they are on Summoner's Rift.
No, the tower's incredibly squishy in this mode. It's often surprising. You see somebody think they just about have enough time to get a recall off, but they end up losing their tower incredibly quickly.
Like this. Like,
yes,
this is a
exactly.
risky recall, honestly.
Exactly. If Cube actually goes back to base here, I think he will just straight up lose this tower. At the same time, he doesn't feel like he's in a spot to be able to actually step up and contest Scout, so it's just going to be a slow bleed out right here for Cube. It's going to take a miracle for him to get back into this one. And because of that, it's most likely we're going to be seeing JDG over on the blue side of the Rift for game number 1. And the blue side definitely the strongest at the moment.
Yeah, we're already thinking about side selection at this point.
This one's done, Zode. I mean, surely.
Scout even dominating the health relics. Here comes the Chain of Corruption. Scout hits his. Yep. Cube does not. Some more auto attacks as the lethal tempos have been procced. Can he hit? Piercing Arrow does connect. Cube does still have his flash. So does Scout. It's actually a relatively even trade in terms of HP, but Cube now has to head back to base. Yep. And that means Scout can once again get some free reign here on this tower and might actually be even able to take it down. Let's see how fast he burns this down with the full bore.
Gone. I do not think you're actually going to be able to get back right here as Cube.
Run, Cube, run! Oh, he's BMing. He doesn't even want to end.
Yeah, it's done. This is done.
He says, "Fight me like a man." Okay. Tower's down. Yep. Scout wins the 1v1. JDG left side select.
So it turns out between top laners and mid laners, it is going to be the mid laners slightly better right here on the Varus. I very much enjoyed that as a 1v1. There was a lot of just dodging back and forth. It did feel a little bit like a dodgeball game between them. But yeah, like you said, it is going to be JDG coming out on top with this one, and most likely going to be the blue side. We'll get confirmation if that is going to be the case in a second's time. And interestingly, with the blue side, often that B1 pick at the moment is the Varus. It's been such an incredibly strong pickup, and something I know that both these ADCs like to play.
Definitely depends on like what game you're on in the series, right? There's other powerful picks like the Gwen, the Nefiri that we have seen be heavily prioritized. The Rumble, Jace, a lot of other picks, a lot of power picks here in this current state of the meta. So being on the blue side, obviously very helpful because it means you get your first pick of the bunch depending on what you decide to ban away in that first phase. And hopefully that 1v1 is not an indication of what this matchup will actually look like, because we want to see a little bit more fight out of WE. Yeah. We don't want to see them necessarily roll over and die, and that's kind of what we got here in that 1v1 here.
That is the unfortunate thing about these mirror matchups. Once you fall behind, well, you don't have any extra skill to pull out from your champion. You don't have the promise of, oh, I outscale him. You are him. Unfortunately, just going to be the loss right there. Like you said, it was a little bit of a slower, less interesting 1v1 by the end. I'm glad that we got to see one with a couple of kills, at least, even if it didn't actually turn into kills being the reason that it was won overall. But still, it's going to be interesting once we get into the actual game to see if WE are able to put up a bit more of a fight. Like you said, we really don't want to just see WE completely roll over, despite the fact that that's exactly what JDG are going to be wanting to have happen.
Yeah, for JDG, it's just about building confidence, right? You got your big matchup against BLG in a couple of days. That's certainly going to be a tough matchup, probably one that is BLG favored by many of the analysts and experts out there. Should be definitely a very fun matchup to cover as well as we get closer to that. As there's just a lot of really fun games every single day, but this, for JDG, you want to make sure you don't end up in a situation like that OMG series, right, where you're dropping games randomly to teams that you were expected to beat. So we're into the draft for game number 1. Let's see what each team has. Once again, JDG on the blue side to start things off.
Yeah, as we were expecting, and interesting to see WE right here banning out onto this Skarner. It's been one of the best looking pickups for Monkey, at the same time giving it over as a potential first pick. Now, will WE get rid of the Gwen? Because the Gwen has also been one of those top priority picks, has been absolutely running the Rift at the moment, and if you do let it through, I'd be a little bit surprised if it doesn't get picked up right here by JDG, but there are still some other pretty good pickups still available. Things like the Rumble also up and available, really good top laners at the moment available. And they're just going to get rid of the Sejuani here, potentially looking to counter-pick with one of these other strongest picks still left on the Rift.
So targeting Shun here early on. That Vi has gone through the draft, and with that Nefuri off the tip of the board, definitely one of the most powerful picks here, but it actually seems like we're leaving a lot of stuff open here. Rumble Gwen, going to be the instant 1-2. Now, it does mean you have a very AP-focused top side, and does confirm Monkey will be the one playing this champion, but it also is a denial away from JDG.
Yeah, and I mean, those are two of the strongest pickups, so to get both of them in the same game is going to be a little bit insane right here. The amounts of damage that you can lay down between this combo is nuts. Like you said, it does leave you a little bit squishy. It leaves you very AP focused in the top side, so you're going to need to shore up that bottom lane and that overall damage profile pretty dang quickly. We are going to get the Ahri picked up right here at the moment. JDG got themselves a little bit of a pick-based composition, very single target at the moment. See if they're going to continue on with that one. If they do, maybe something a little bit like the Kai'Sa going to be a potential ADC that they're going to be looking towards. This would certainly make things a little bit more AoE.
Yeah, Ala really likes this Kennen pick. I think he's played it a ton throughout his competitive career. I saw the Jace hover. That's another pick that was banned in all 3 games that we had in our last series between OMG and LGD. But it looks like JDG not focusing on that right now. This would be 3 very powerful picks for the top side of WE if they decide to pick it up. But with the Kennen locked in, maybe they want to adjust and try to pick something that can do a little bit more damage to it. So the Corki, with a little bit of flexibility there as well, will be the response to wrap up this first phase.
Yeah, it could potentially be the Corki going on to Karis in the mid lane. We've been seeing quite a lot more as a bot laner at the moment. That's where it seems to be at its strongest, and does really give you a lot of that AD damage that you were needing right here on WE's composition. At the moment, they do have some decent team fighting potential, but it's still a little bit hard to play this one out without any significant tanks. I'd be expecting JDG to try to take a couple of these big tank supports off of the board. Things like the Alistar, the Rel, the Leona, all of those have been very strong at the moment, and actually decide to go towards the Poppy, another one of those tanky supports that we've been seeing recently that's able to completely change the game, especially with that ultimate.
Yeah. Take a look at the rest of what is to be selected. Most likely just bottom lanes being targeted here. You see the Poppy takeaway here for JDG, making sure that Vampire can't get his hands on that one. Provide some denial of the dashes that are available right now for JDG. Pays Kai'Sa has been very, very, very good, especially here in the LPL, so that will be off the table for him, as we'll see what they decide to do. I think WE likely just I mean, I don't know. Do you pick support here and try to leave that flexibility for the Corki, or do you just make sure that, or do you prefer Vampire getting a counter pick in that support position on R5?
I think I would probably leave the flexibility until last, but at the same time, the support really is going to change up the way that this game is played out. If you decide to go towards something very aggressive with it, something like the Nico potentially, then that tells you a very different story than if it is just one of these tankier supports that we do still have available. Right now, though, it looks like they are going to be hovering on towards the Jhin. It's been a pretty strong ADC at the moment. It gives you a lot of extra range that this composition would otherwise be missing, and it does very much lock the Corki on into the mid lane. They are going to lock this one in. The comp still very, very squishy right here for WE. This is a big risk of a composition.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have a lot of damage, but not a lot of defensive stats. And I look at that Kennen that All is currently playing, and that's certainly a champion that can burst through, targets with not a lot of resistances here with that slicing maelstrom. So gotta be a little bit worried if you're WE, but you do have the opportunity to make this a volatile game, which I honestly don't hate as a strategy, especially when you are a pretty severe underdog. JDG are also going for a relatively squishy team comp, but it seems a little bit more well-rounded overall. You have a big engage here from the Kennen, you have MF with some other big AoE, and then we'll see what JDG decide to lock in with their support position. I expect something with some more heavy engage that can follow up of a cease and desist from Shun.
Yeah, the only reason that Missing isn't straight locking in this Rel is because the Alistar is very good into it, and you're kind of deciding which version of the matchup you want. The Rel works slightly better alongside the MF and the Kennen, but at the same time, you really don't want to give over that complete counter to Vampire, so they do decide to go towards the Alistar, and it means Vampire, instead of picking up the Rel for himself, countering himself, going to go towards the Nautilus. Now, we did say that we'd had a couple of games out of Vampire on the Nautilus that we weren't the biggest fans of, but I think in this composition, they needed some extra engage, and they needed some tankiness to be able to just face check brushes, something otherwise this composition is going to have quite a lot of struggles doing.
And as we load up here for game number 1, again, implications, I feel like not as severe, surprisingly enough, compared to the group Nirvana for our Ascension group. Obviously, you want to end up in that top 4 because that locks you a split 2 playoffs, but you know, still just, I think, in general, the opportunity to get reps against some of the top teams that you have in the league and some of the top teams in general in the world, especially if you are WE. So going with, I think, a more skill-expressive comp this time around, a lot more damage-oriented. I would expect to see Monkey still play a role, although the ganks aren't necessarily going to be as easy to lock down, given that Gwen is a champion without a lot of hard CC.
And the lanes are not particularly giving you easy gank setup either, right? Rumble has a little bit of a slow. Corki, same sort of thing. You know, there's not hard CC in either of those lanes. So if you're really going to be looking towards ganks, it's going to have to be towards the bottom side. If not, maybe just using the skirmishing power of the Gwen to try to make it uncomfortable right here for Jun. See if you can get him off kilter in his jungle, potentially. And then just in the straight-up skirmishes we're going to have around these objectives. That's where Monkey's really going to be looking. But we will be following him very closely. If WE are to win this game, if they're to pick up a game right here versus JDG, it's going to have to come from this guy. He has been the beating heart of this WE team. So let's see what he can do in this one.
Well, he got himself one of the strongest champions that are currently in League of Legends, so that'll hopefully help him for the fans of World Elite as we are loading onto the Rift. Game number 1 in our Ascension group. We've got the Giles going for JDG as they take on WE.
Let's see it right here. As we said, this one is going to have big implications really for JDG. WD, we're not expecting quite as much from them right here. They were one of the weaker looking teams that we had during the group stage. Right now, though, already going to be getting aggressive here onto Missing. He's not going to die, but he is going to take a good chunk of health. Likely going to have to go for a quick reset. Let's see if we are actually going to get some funky lanes. I'm not expecting it. I think we're just going to go back to standard lanes. That's certainly what the game wants to have happen with all of the anti-swapping that has been implemented. But just seeing if potentially WE could have found something early on. Instead, like we expected, just back to the standard. So where are the junglers going to be starting right here? Jun seems like he wants to be starting down towards the bottom side of the map, opposite right here for Monkey. He does want to be roaming down towards that bottom lane, where he does have the setup for ganks if he wants it.
Yeah, if you're out of there before 1 minute 30, then you're all good. Then you can kind of go for whatever play you want. And so, I like to see WE playing with a little bit more, you know, knowledge that they've got to do something a little unorthodox to win this series. And so, it seems like they are aware of that. They went for that early level 1 invade or early level 1 play on the top side, try to stack things up. And it did not end up working out, but that's okay. There's still a lot more game to play here. Junglers, again, starting on the opposite side of the map, blocks here, as we have Monkey actually going to be playing down towards Taeyun and Vampire.
Yeah, exactly where they've got a little bit of setup to be able to actually try for these ganks. And also, it makes sense to just be trying to move a little bit away from this Rumble, who should be having a pretty back and forth matchup in this top side, but he should be okay. I'm not expecting Cube right here to get solo killed, and Cube has really shown throughout these previous set of matches we got in the placements that he's very good without a lot of attention. He doesn't need a lot of jungle attention to be able to make things work for himself. He's been very resilient to ganks and dives and things like that, just keeping himself as a little bit of a bastion up in the top lane. Now that could change, of course, with this game. He's on a bit more of an aggressive pickup than we do usually see from these top laners, so maybe in this situation Monkey, a little bit later on into this game, does want to hide up there for a gank, because potentially trying to put Arla behind will be a big thing for putting JDG's composition off. Arla, like you said, with this big ulti on a very squishy WE composition, could be huge for the team fights.
I see Vampire got the exhaust summoner spell on his F key, and so that's going to be very important once you get some of these later game team fights. If he can time it right, so when Ollie goes in with the slicing maelstrom, that exhaust will be available. You can place it on top of the cannon. That'll greatly reduce the impact that this champion can have in a team fight. And so, I think that we'll have our eyes on as we continue to go throughout this game. We're pretty even still overall. Karis doing a nice job doing a big chunk of damage onto Scout. And now, looks like Sean might be in the area looking for a play.
Karis just stepped down.
Yeah.
If he'd have stepped up just a little bit in that moment, would most likely have gotten flash queued right there, would have at least blown the flash back out of Karis. Instead, steps down. I'm not sure that he had seen. Potentially did have a little bit of vision. If not, was just good timing from him to be able to step back down, not get himself caught out right there. Mid laners are both going to head back for resets, drawing it back into the lanes. We've got a minute until the first Drake is going to be spawning, 2 until the grubs are up and available. And the first Drake is actually going to be the Hex Tech, so this is one of the best ones to get as an individual individual Drake. Both of these teams would love to be able to grab those stats for themselves. We'll see if we get a bit of a skirmish around there, or if it's once again very much going to be a focus towards the top side of the map. Now, often when there's a Gwen involved in a game, I talk a lot about how we want to see all the grubs onto that team, because giving grubs to Gwen means she's an absolute side lane menace. That's not so much going to be the case in this game, because the Gwen being in the jungle, you don't really want her off side laning, putting that split push pressure down.
Yeah, a lot of other things the jungler has to do other than sitting in a side lane.
Unfortunately,
in terms
so.
of the role that he plays for his team. So I don't expect Monkey to do that as much. Still be very big in these team fights. And speaking of seeing some of that damage that could be issued. Alla now is getting collapsed on here as Monkey already procs the ghost. Alla flashes away in response. He's going to be matched by Cube, who now is overheated, and there comes the snip snip, and it's WE and Monkey picking up first blood.
There we go. As we were saying, Monkey has to be the driving force behind this team if WE want any hope of being able to win this one. And it's a really nice dive for them to be able to get that timing just before Alla has that level 6. Once the level 6 is up and available, it's going to be so much harder to try to gank onto this champion. So well timed right here. Of course, JDG, they're going to recognize that seeing the jungler up towards the top side for WE opens up the Drake for themselves. And despite the fact Karras is in the area, it's going to be very unlikely that they can do anything about this one. Maybe they can try for some kills though.
Yeah, they're looking maybe on a missing. Valk available for Karras. Doesn't want to go too far forward. So we'll just be that dragon traded over for JDG. However, they are down now a kill in terms of gold. Cube is able to get a decent CS lead up on the top side, as well as just the rest of the map doing pretty solidly overall for WE. I mean, you said it, Blockster. You wanted at least the early game to be kind of an even state for WE, and right now that's what we're seeing.
Exactly. I think in a lot of these situations where we've got top teams versus bottom teams, it's not necessarily that the teams get beaten out during the early stages of the game unless there's a massive gap. It's around the team fights where oftentimes they begin to fall down. But it is just nice to see these teams actually be able to go toe-to-toe in the laning phase. And then, hey, if things begin to go wrong a little bit later on, it's not going to be the end of the world for my opinion of WE right here. But at least these early stages, seeing Monkey be proactive, getting things done, playing through Cube, someone who often gets a little bit ignored in these games, I like it. I've been happy with the way WE have played out the first 6.5 minutes. But of course, we've got a lot of League of Legends left to play.
Yeah, because something that, hands can't necessarily give you is experience and the ability to play out team fights as a coordinated unit. And that's what these guys kind of know what to do, as Cube going to be targeted here in a 1v3. Going to try to survive as long as possible and burn as many cooldowns as he can. Overheats on the Rumble before going down to Shun. But here comes the rest of the team. Karras picks up the first kill on the missing. And now it's a 3v2. Now turned into a 3v3. Here comes Scout. He's exhausted. There's a slicing maelstrom from Alla, though. Makes another 1-for-1 trade. Karras is able to dash away with another Valkyrie. And now the soul laners for JDG going to try to do a little bit more damage onto the Corki, but he will escape with his life. Overall, a very even trade. It's 2 for 2.
Yeah, I'm impressed with the way that WE were able to recognize this play was happening. Cube knew he was going to die, could potentially have tried to get away, would have likely died anyway. Instead decides to stick around, run around within his equalizer, trying to make sure JDG spent as much time in there as possible. And it does enough damage to be able to open up the rest of his friends who are incoming. You can see him on the map right now, sprinting up towards top lane. Missing, walks straight through the equalizer. Alla spends a bit of time in it as well. And sure, you end up going down, but it's a good hook from Vampire to be able to set this one up. But also the roam still coming through right here from Scout means that this one turns into a little bit of a mess. Still, enough damage. Karras actually gets to stand and just fully use that Gatling gun and gets a ton of damage off in that one. 1-for-1, more than happy with that for WE. They are losing themselves a little bit in terms of some of the lanes for just CS. But still, Monkey going to be able to pick up some of the grubs right here too. This has been a good early game.
So far, so good for WE. And again, this is all that we were hoping for. Be competitive. Learn some stuff here in this early stages over these next couple of weeks before, of course, you likely, as a team that's not expected to finish top 4 in this Group Ascend, have to play in that do or die best of 5 to get yourself into the playoffs. That is the goal right now here for WE. And so far, it looks like they have been taking it in stride. This is their first game in Group Ascend. They're the only team to have yet to play a game. And so far against JDG, they are looking very good, and it's around the win conditions that we were expecting, most notably Monkey on this Gwen, leading the charge in terms of the plays being made across the map.
And giving a lot of these kills right here over to Karras, was able to pick up both of the kills in that top lane. now has 700 gold and advantage up against Scout, and just is in a pretty good position, and we've seen what Corkis can do. Of course, pretty short-ranged as a champion, and there's a lot of threat, there's a lot of backline threat for JDG, so it's going to be tricky to see where Karis can actually find these moments to go in and deal the damage that he needs to in order to get his team to success, but he's been put in a good position at the moment to at least try to carry this game out.
A lot more League to play, though. I mean, Karis still not at his full Infinity Edge yet. We got the Grubs not spawning for another 3 minutes for that second iteration. That's Dragon in about a minute's time as well. So now still time to farm up here for JDG. They still feel very good about where the game is at this point. I think their late game generally is very good with the Kennen and MMF. And a lot of good tools to kind of set up for those players, whether it's the point and click here of an of a Vi, or even missing landing a multi-man knockout.
Exactly. It's going to be tricky for them to be able to find those moments, but at the same time, JDG, they've been great on these engages, and it's very much, I think, going to be on WE to avoid that initial bit of engage. For JDG, though, it's all about the pick potential that they've also got. Sure, the straight-up 5v5 teamfight is going to be great with Arla and Missing and Pays, like you said, but between Jun and Scout, I think these two champions getting a pick early on and turning that into a 4v5 is going to be the easiest way to success for JDG. Why take a 5v5 where potentially W could fight back when you really don't need to? Oh, Pays. Okay, he's fine, he's fine. Here. Vampire was in the area, I was a little bit worried.
I got a little dicey there for a second, but Pays hasn't yet contributed to a kill, but is still able to farm up nicely, working, I think, towards that first set of Bloodthirst here. It's Dragon. It started up by Monkey and WE. Mid prio, though, generated by JDG, but they're going to walk straight into Vampire, who actually Hex Flashes out of nowhere, and now lands that hook. Here comes the bullet time, but the Gwen Shroud actually keeping Monkey alive for so much time. Here comes the Needlework two-man pulp, though, and now JDG able to win that fight easily. It's a 2-0.
Yeah, despite the fact that the Hallowed Mist was able to keep Monkey alive for ages right there, it really doesn't matter in the end. You've got that re-engage potential out of JDG. Missing was just able to hold off on heading in until the moment at which it was most appropriate, and that's also going to completely open up that Dragon Pit. Jun going to be able to pick this one up, and that's now 2 Dragons in the back pocket of JDG, something they can most certainly try to play around. We'll obviously see what the Soul is going to be in just a second's time. Let's see if it's going to be one of the better ones, because if it is, then this could be something huge for JDG to try to play.
Got Ocean.
Ocean.
What do you think?
Okay. Not the best, not the best.
It's alright.
In this situation, with not a lot of tanks on your composition, it's not ideal. You know, you would have preferred a little bit more damage for your composition. At the same time, though, Ocean, not going to be the end of the world. It's not one of the worst ones, certainly. And yeah, Monkey, he survives for ages, but that double knock-up right there from Missing was more than enough. And the Gwen, at that point, no items completed, just doesn't deal enough damage on the re-engage, even with all of the needlework landing onto pretty much every single member.
So far, Missing playing up to standard. You know, we were talking about him being sometimes a hit-or-miss player here for JDG, as you know, a decent chunk of them have been throughout the entirety of 2025. Right now, finding the plays that they need and ending up with his team having about a 600 gold lead. The second spawn of the Grubs has arrived. We'll see which team wants to take priority around that one first.
Yeah, those 6 Grubs going to be very important. These compositions have got a little bit of a lack of straight-up split push potential, but with 6 Grubs that could open that one up. If you really want to go towards it, you can see JDG, they're all in the area, potentially hunting around this one, and they are going to have the fast track over towards this Grub Pit. It's going to be on WE to decide if they think it's worthwhile trying to go in and get themselves a couple of these, or if ending up 3 for 3 in terms of the Grubs is not the end of the world for them.
Not a terrible position for them to fight. I mean, right now, they're only down a few hundred gold. They could potentially find out Scout here. Nicely used Hallowed Mist to make sure that Monkey doesn't get hit up by the Charm. First Grub will get secured by Shun, and I think that's all that WE really wanted, to at least force members of JDG around the pit instead of them trying to allocate their resources in a split fashion. Third Grub still is available, and Monkey could potentially try to steal this one away. He has the smite, could dash in, and instead it's Vampire actually looking for the hook, initially onto Missing. Not too much damage dealt. Instead, now the target is going to be Shun. But look at the bullet time. It's going to be Monkey picking up at least that first Grub. But here comes a teleport from the other side. Always finally arrived in the fight. Uses the slicing maelstrom. Pops Missing. Equalizer comes out, though. And now JDG are a bit split in this team fight. The rest of WB, they're going to have to try to escort out safely. Here's a nice charm from Scout as the world champion will take down Monkey. Shun will follow, but Taeyun will shut him down with a forced shot. Q flashes over the wall. Who will potentially try to follow the rumble? as the curtain call is going to get canceled by a charm. Scout still hunting for more, but at least just forces Taeyun to cancel the ultimate.
Cube is still on the run right now, should just about be able to get himself back underneath the tower, but it is going to be a complete mess of a team fight. Massive advantage right here for JDG. They're able to pick themselves up. A couple of the grubs do not manage to pick up all three, so they're not going to be able to move further towards defeats with that one, but still, all of the kills you get on the backside of that team fight is massive. And once again, we got to see a huge ulti right there out of Pays, and Scout was just working his way through that team fight incredibly effectively.
I'm gonna look at this. Vampire starting the engage off. Honestly, surprised that WWE actually came out better than they or worse than they did.
Yeah, it looked like it could have been an okay fight right here, especially at the point at which Jun gets a little bit collapsed upon between Taeyun, but the TP coming in from Ala completely splits the fight and gives Jun the re-engage potential, and at that point then, you're just stuck in the wrong place right here as WE. They're not able to get themselves back towards their towers. Taeyun's never able to ult in a good spot in this team fight. He does right at the end, but by that point, he's not really going to be able to land it onto anyone, and Cube has to go running, so it's just a split fight, and I think Vampire, as much as the engage could have been good, going in onto missing, not necessarily the right decision.
Yeah, I mean, using a major cooldown onto the Alistar, who wants to get closer to your entire team anyway,
exactly.
As speaking of getting closer, that's going to be Monkey getting very, very close to Scout, maybe a little bit closer than he would have liked with that nicely max range charm. Another kill for JDG, his blocks are there starting to potentially extend this gold lead a little bit further than W would like.
And this is what we were saying, right? In the individual laning phase, it was actually looking pretty good right here out of WE, but this is where a lot of these worst teams begin to falter right here. It's the point at which you go from the skirmishes into the straight up team fights, all of the lane matchups break down and you're all over the place, and these worst teams, their macro just isn't up to scratch. JDG, they're just rotating across the map a little bit better, a little bit faster. We saw it in the top lane play, we're seeing it now again around this bottom side of the map, and Scout takes a big chunk out of this bottom lane tower. Is not able to quite pick it up, so neither team has been able to grab the first brick so far, but it's still a pretty big advantage at the moment for JDG.
Yeah, and that's kind of how we're expecting things to go. Obviously, Pays has had some pretty big moments. Scout been playing very well in this game specifically. I know, obviously, I feel like with Scout being on JDG, he's in my opinion, it seems like he's been almost overlooked in terms of the LPL mid laners that are currently playing this season, which is kind of a crazy thing to say considering the pedigree that this guy has. But you think of, like, you know, Knight playing really well, even Rookie and Doinby, like, this guy should belong in that conversation, but I feel like in general, some of us kind of just forget that JDG even exists sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of when we have conversations of the top 4 teams, it does feel like they're getting left out of the conversation quite a lot at the moment, which is surprising for a team with this many amazing players, this much history behind it. But honestly, when we're talking about top tier teams, it feels like in terms of the conversation, you talk about AL. Oh, hang on. He's alright.
Yeah, as we were discussing that.
He goes back.
Monkey!
What?
He tries to come back in
Monkey.
and steal that dragon. He knew it was a one-way trip, and it was just a 50-50, but Sean able to lock it down and pick up soul point for JDG.
I was expecting him to just leave. That's why I kept talking. I was like, aye, it's fine. He's just gonna walk away.
Yeah.
Concede the Drake. Nope. Straight back in. Fair enough, buddy. And I guess I can understand it, right? You really don't want to be giving over that soul point already, just 17 minutes into the game. It's a very early soul potentially going to be picked up right here for JDG. And like we were talking about earlier, not necessarily the best, the Ocean Drake, but still going to make these more extended team fights incredibly good for JDG. And that is a bit of a risk for them, because anytime you've got yourself a Jhin as your ADC, he loves a more extended team fight where he's able to get a couple of rotations of the bullets off, then open up with that ulti to be able to close out a few of the kills. And that's much harder to do when the Ocean Soul's doing work for you in terms of just getting back. Monkey just didn't have time for this one, but I guess I respect going back in. I do. He nearly gets it, to be fair. He's
it would have
so
been
close.
Yeah, that would have been like one of those Giga Chad TikTok edits if he did steal it away, right?
Mm. And if you do steal it, you buy more time for your team. You give yourself a little bit more time for the scaling to come through. It's not the end of the world.
He's you know, we talked about him being the reason that W win games and also sometimes the reason they lose games. Yeah. He's 1-5, but you admire him going for plays like this, right? His ghost seemingly is always on cooldown because he's always going to be using it to try to find an opportunity for something on this Gwen. Only problem is it just hasn't worked out so far against JDG.
No, he's very coin flip, but at the same time it feels like he's trying desperately to drag his team into good positions in these games, and it worked for the first couple of minutes of this one. Unfortunately, at this point, like you said, 1-5 has been dying quite a lot. He always dies quite a lot. Even in their wins, he tends to have died an awfully large amount. But still, when you've got a worse team around you, potentially, which unfortunately WE just do than JDG, you've got to try something, and if your jungler is being passive, well, you're just going to slowly lose these games. For as much as we can criticize WE about, they're never boring. They always make the games that they're playing in very interesting to watch.
Yeah, for better or for worse, I guess, sometimes. And right now, not looking too good for them, although they did have some of their moments at the first 10 minutes of this game. We do want to give them some of their flowers for that, as it is their first game in the Ascension stage.
Of many. First of many with the way that this schedule works out.
18 games, yeah.
Crazy.
It's a lot of them to come after this. And so, for JDG, they got to make sure that they take it slow, go with the flow, and do everything methodically and not too erratically at this point, knowing that they're in a very good position here in this game.
Ooh, hook goes through.
Taken, started up here, missing actually procs the ultimate a little bit late, so he takes a big chunk of damage early on. You saw in the picture-in-picture, Cube does not have the equalizer, and so it would be a bit of a tough fight for JDG to go, for 4W to go for, but Monkey is able to secure that red buff, which is a small win here for his team.
It's at least something. WE, they can't just sit back. They have to keep trying in this game. Potentially we're going to get a 1v1 here.
Wow, yeah. I was surprised Ollie went in after missing the shuriken, but I think he's just going to win out of it anyway. No! Karis does. One last shuriken would have been able to do the deed, but Karis, the Corky, gets his kill number 3 in this game.
That's actually a pretty big time for this to happen because Atakan is up and available right here in the top lane. You see, Cube heads back to base. It's going to teleport his... Sorry. Karis heads back to base. It's going to teleport back towards the top side of the map.
For it.
Yeah, W, why not, right? You've got yourself a little bit of time. The only risk is that Arla does have the TP. We'll be able to re-engage. This isn't going to be an easy pickup. It's not going down that far. Still, why not?
Teleport comes in. He's going to be Scout. Making it a 4v5 at the map. The health bar is not necessarily looking great here for WE. Going to be Vampire once again starting off the engage. Knocks down Missing. He doesn't have his ultimate from earlier. Should be burned down, but will get away from that final proc of the equalizer. There comes Pays. Bullet time. It'll at least lock down Vampire for now. And
it's
Sean
stolen!
Steals away the Otacon. And it's now disaster unfolding for World Elite with their world falling before their eyes. Scout dashing forward, looking to finish off the final kill here for JDG. It is 4, soon to be 5. A clean ace for the squad.
Oh, woof. That one hurts right there to lose out on 4v5. You nearly get that initial kill right there onto Missing, but once again, we see WE use a lot of their big damage tools in an attempt to kill the support, and they don't even quite manage to finish that kill. We'll see here. The last needlework out of Monkey goes wide, and Missing's able to walk away from that one. And it's just so unfortunate. I can understand the idea of going for Atakan. I can understand trying to kill Missing. Last needlework, yeah, just goes wide. Nope. And without that initial kill, it's still not the end of the world. It's actually this bullet time that does so much extra damage. And more than that, it's Atakan. Atakan is dealing so much damage right here to WE that they're in no fit position to be able to fight the second half of this one. And getting it stolen away is just extra salt in the wound.
Yeah, I mean, Vampire tried his best to press that exhaust button on the MF, but didn't seem to block too much of that damage, as JDG now are up about 6,000 gold. The Baron not spawning for another 3 minutes or so, so they can just use these false lives to play as aggressive as they please. Right now, tough for WE. I mean, you respect them going for that play after finding a pick, like they did with the solo kill that Karis was able to collect. But at the end of the day, it was not enough, and now got a long way out of this one.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is going to go a long way towards making this game worse and worse. Losing the soul as well, not going to be ideal. And as we watch these towers begin to melt, we've still got 2 minutes until the next Drake is going to spawn. The JDG, they're in a great spot to just be able to step forwards. Not killable at this point. You don't want to give over the 200 gold for the shutdown. Oh, Monkey, does he want the flank here? They could try.
Oh, Missing. 2-man pull to start things off. Taeyun already has to be chunked a little bit by the Ignite, but Missing might have gone a
right?
little bit too far forward. The ultimate blocking a lot of the damage for now. Vampire the first to fall, and here comes Sean with the cease and desist immediately onto Carrots. That's the main carry, and the Slicing Maelstrom will finish off this game before the Baron even spawns Bloxer. It's going to be Pays picking up a big chunk of kills, and all 5 members of JDG hunting for the Nexus of World Elite.
Can Taeyun do anything about this one? You'd have to imagine that the answer is no. He's going to get pushed back into the base by Pays and Scout, and the towers will fall. The Nexus soon to follow. People are respawning, but it's just surely not going to be enough.
Yeah, Vampire dies one more time for the culture. 0-5-2 his final scoreline. Max range charm again from Scout, but nobody will be able to take Taeyun down before the Nexus drops. JDG taking game number 1.
Get involved a little bit more, maybe just a hyperscaler as well could be the potential pickup as we do jump on into the draft right here. Hard fearless, of course, so anything we saw previously is now gone, and we are going to see a couple more of these top tier ADCs taken off of the board already.
And so, of course, with that fearless aspect, things like the Gwen not available, as that was one of the strongest picks currently in the meta. WE, they tried their darndest. They tried to get the combination of Gwen and Rumble, 2 of the strongest players, some of the 2 of the strongest champions we have currently in the meta, didn't end up working. Now they're going to get the Nefiri, so they're going to get their fair share of the OPs in this draft, in this series, Blockster. Maybe JDG handicapping themselves a little bit, seeing what they can do to counter the OPs instead of just banning them away themselves.
Hey, potentially. And in terms of champions that Monkey's been really good on, the Nefiri actually was one of his best looking pickups. He picked it up in that game that they were able to beat out EDG for, that stopped them being that 4th place team straight down into Group Nirvana. Going to be really exciting to see what he can do on this one, because like I said, it is OP at the moment. It's such a strong pickup. Of course, that does open up JDG to be able to get their fair share of the nice grabs as well. We are going to see the Ezreal right here for Pays, something he's been incredibly strong on at the moment, and something that's also just been dealing so much damage. We've been seeing a ton of 40-50% damage shares for Ezreal's recently. Be surprised if it happens in this game though. They're going to get the Jace as well.
There's another one of those super powerful picks that we've seen be banned in almost every single game that has been played so far in the LPL today. But now it likely will go either towards Ale or Scout, and we'll see what the deciding response is for WE. You know, we've seen things like Scion be a response, but maybe Cube wants to have a little bit more agency in this game.
Yes.
The Ambessa still available as well. It's going to be a Kaisa locked in for Taeyun, as we're just getting started in terms of what picks can be locked in here for WE.
This is exactly what I wanted to see right here out of Taeyun, something that forced him to be a little bit more aggressive. He played a game on the Kai'Sa during the placements, looked really good, and it actually was one of the games that they ended up winning, and I think that he just looks at his best when he has to go get involved with the rest of the team. I'd like to see WE play themselves quite an aggressive composition right here. The Aurora would certainly fit in with that kind of style. Just all of your champions right now are looking to go straight on into the backline. I would be very surprised if we don't see the same sort of style from the remaining pickups that we will see. Same sort of thing from the support and the top lane. JDG, they're much more about poke at the moment. Not going to be a straight up all-in kind of composition, but they are relatively squishy at the moment and could fall to WE's overwhelming aggression if they're not careful.
Yeah, you know, the thematic counter to poke is hard engage, and so that's what WE have lined up for themselves right now. Looks like JDG gonna round out their composition just a little bit more with the Xin Zhao. Some more skirmishing in the early game, as well as, you know, an ability to engage, start a fight kind of on his own. As we get into the second phase of bans, looking for bot lane, for support pickups here for both of these teams. That's certainly one of those lanes that we're going to be seeing some bans towards.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with the Jhin, right, is that you can actually go toe-to-toe with Monkey on this Nefiri. A lot of the champions do get poked out by it quite heavily. This is one that can actually go and try to skirmish alongside it. It's still going to be a little bit of a risk to do. It's a bit of a 50-50, but it's not going to completely lock you out of these skirmishes, as we now see quite a lot of these tanky pickups potentially being taken off of the board. The Jace still is flexible between the top and the mid lane, and it is interesting that WE going to take away the Galio, potentially thinking that this is going to be Ala's Jace right here. I think that makes a lot of sense, and getting themselves a little bit of extra tankiness into this mid lane and not necessarily having to put it all on missing does work for this composition.
Yeah, well, I don't know. The Galio is certainly one of the bigger options there if they wanted to go for more of a beefier frontliner in for Scout. Vampires Rakan going to get taken away, and we'll see what the last target here is for WE. In terms of what WE could continue to select, most likely looking for a top laner and a support. And still looking for a matchup into that Jace. That Scion that we were talking about, not going to be available. As now we head over to JDG's side. Likely to pick up something for missing. The Rel provides some much needed hard engage.
Yeah, and it works very well with this composition. You can poke everybody out, then head in as missing. He does need to be careful not to get caught out. I've seen him on the Rel quite a lot, get himself into situations where he really shouldn't be at. WE, they also do need themselves a support right here. Vampire looked absolutely best on the Nico. The Nico was the best Vampire performance that we got from him during the placements. Everything else was a little bit hit or miss. We said it was a little bit iffy on some of these tankier engaged tools, but the Nico did look great. The Ambessa, one of those strongest top laners that we've actually been seeing go through a couple of the drafts recently. It has a pretty rough time into the Jace for a while. You can all in him once you hit that level 6 though, but it will be the Leona to round this out. This is a composition that can go diving in overall. The only person who can't really follow that up initially is Vampire, but hopefully he's going to be starting these team fights off for them. Yeah,
with the Solar Flare, you can be the one to initiate it, even if you are a little bit further away. That's the difference in terms of value that a Leona provides versus something, you know, like a Rel, which has to be a little bit closer to begin and engage. You have a lot of long-range follow-up as well with things like the Ambessa, and then a Kai'Sa jumping over on the top as well. So I do like what what WE have pulled out for themselves. However, what it means is that they're going to have to probably win early off of Monkey on this Neferi, and you're trying to do that against a team like JDG. And if that doesn't happen, well, all of a sudden, you're playing up against a late game Victor, a late game Ezreal, and a late game Jace. That is definitely never a recipe for success.
No, indeed. But at the same time, I think we would have been saying the same thing in every single matchup for WE. Whatever team they were up against, it's going to be all on Monkey, whoever they're playing. And right here, on this Neferi, one of the best pickups that we've seen for him on a very aggressive composition that wants to go all in, lots of dive potential. It's at least going to be fun. It's at least going to be interesting. I would be very surprised if we just watch WE roll over and die and let this game happen to them. They're at least going to be trying right here. Like I said though, if they begin to fall behind, this composition really doesn't have any recourse for getting itself back into a game later on.
And so the champions loaded back onto the Rift. We are here for game number 2. Here in our second series of the day on LPL English is JDG taking on WE. Best of 3 here. JDG currently up 1-0. And WE, hey, shout out to them. They decided to get a little wild here in this draft. They're going to play very aggressive. It's going to be all about the skirmishing, specifically in this early game from Monkey on the Neferi. Very excited to see it. On the other side, though, for JDG, they've got the late game insurance. They're just going to make sure they hold the line, don't lose this game too early on.
Indeed. It may well be a similar story to what we saw in game number 1. Hopefully with a different outcome. Would be really fun to get to see a third game. It's always fun to watch what WE can do, even if they haven't necessarily been the best team recently. See a ton of pings going on towards the top side of the map right here for JDG. They've actually sent all 5 members up here, potentially looking for a bait with Ala.
Oh, you know what it was? It's because they did this, because WE did a similar thing to them last time. Taeyu and Vampire tried to chunk out Missy a little bit on the top side, and so they're trying to spot somebody out up there too. Try to give WE a taste of their own medicine, and unfortunately for them, did not work out as they'll head back to base empty-handed. And the interesting thing that I want to follow here is what the junglers do, what Monkey and Shun end up executing on in terms of their path. For Monkey, finding kills early on is going to be very important, as you want to try to get this snowball rolling as fast as possible. Similar thing for Shun, except you have some of that late game insurance that we talked about in the Victor and the Ezreal specifically.
Absolutely, and with WE, it's a little bit tricky here with the lanes they've drafted for themselves to know where exactly Monkey's going to be able to look to try go get those ganks off. Now, there are a couple of lanes where you're likely to be getting pushed in. Potentially in this top lane could be looking for an overextended Ala, but at the same time, dives have really been what WE have loved to focus on. Monkey loves a dive, Cube loves to try to fight back from them. So if you're not constantly being able to put yourself in a position where you can get dives off, WE, they've struggled a little bit with actually finding these early priority plays. We'll have to see what the actual pathing is going to be. Monkey has started towards the bottom side of the map, potentially looking to go up towards the top side. Is going to be exactly followed right here by Jun though. And so if you end up in a counter gank situation, that's oftentimes where this Jin Zhao can really shine.
Yeah, and so for Monkey, who does clear a little bit quicker overall on this Neferi, going to be an interesting thing to follow, but more interestingly here for WE, their bot lane is getting pathed away from by their jungler and are taking a beating right now from Pays and Missing.
Yeah, they really are. The poke that you can get out of this is going to be huge. The all-in potential, of course, of WE's bot lane is very strong, but they need to be careful to pick the correct opportunity to go for that. Missing, though, if he does try to get a little bit too aggressive, that could really open things up for WE. It's quite tricky to get away as a Rel anyway, especially into something like the Leona. Scout.
What they need to do, find some kills like this.
Big
Doesn't
damage.
look like it's enough to burst down Scout. The bleed is going to take him to below 100 HP. Really nice discipline from Scout, knowing he was not going to die and actually saving his flash. He'll be able to teleport right back to lane.
Monkey, though, is going to be well aware right now of where Jun is at. Is actually going to force the red buff reset, force him to take a slightly different pathing around right here. Nobody in this top side is going to be surprised by where the junglers are. It would be very shocking if we end up seeing a gank work out at this point for either of them, as they are so on vision. But like you said, it was nice from Scout to know that he didn't need to flash, didn't need to panic to get away. Still, though, flying the teleport that early on, not going to be ideal.
Did you just ignite that guy? Did you see that?
Yeah, Vampire.
You just ignited a full HP Pays without nade carry being there. Nice job, Vampire. Interesting. Anyway,
It's a very Vampire
Karras
thing
teleports
to do.
back in. And immediately gets a big chunk of his HP bar taken away. Yeah, very Vampire thing to do. I agree.
Baffling. Either way, still not going to change too much at the moment, of course. Ignite, pretty short cooldown, already a quarter of the way through, so, you know, you'll get that one back relatively soon, and we are actually going to see these bot lanes move around right now. Top lane is heading down towards the bottom side of the map. Bot lane is moving on up, with the first Drake going to be in Ocean, not necessarily one of the highest priorities to try to pick up, and so the Grubs in a minute 40 could well be the thing that these teams are going to be looking to try play around. The skirmish potential out of both of these compositions is very high. I think you're going to have to be incredibly careful with both of these teams to not over-aggress and get yourself into a bad situation where you've gone way too far in, just can get taken down by all of the skirmishing power, all of the damage available to these comps. Right now, Taeyoon, he's still going to get pushed around a little bit in this bottom lane. He is going to be joined up by Vampire in just a second's time, but this minion wave is really almost completely unapproachable for Taeyoon.
Yeah, and if you're WE, you want to fight around like this first spawn of the Grubs. 6 minutes in, this is like you want to try to skirmish here with the Neferi. But already you look at the gold deficits, and you're down basically in every position at this point. You know,
Yep.
Right now it's 2 waves for Ala right now in the lead. 1 wave for Scout in the lead. 2 to 3 waves for Pays over Taeyoon. So in terms of the amount of resources and the strength of the champions, it's not necessarily going to be early game versus late game. It's going to be just who has more money at this point. And right now that very much goes towards JDG.
Really is. It's been JDG just getting themselves into these good positions overall in their laning phases. Nothing too much, you know, it's not a massive advantage for anybody from JDG. WE, they've not fallen behind, they're not getting solo killed constantly. Karras actually could get a kill here. Yeah, has to.
Hey, nicely
flash.
done. Getting that XP advantage is going to be big. Monkey dashes away after the wind becomes lightning, connects onto him from Shun.
Vampire.
No re-engage. Vampire standing very far forward, as you are potentially alluding to. Has to flash away from the stun of Missing, and that's a key cooldown down.
Yep, exactly. Vampire had no reason to step. Oh, no!
Oh, no! We just flash in!
Oh,
Jeez,
Jun missed the
made
second
my heart
wind
stop for a
become
second.
lightning. Monkey, you can't do that to your support. After he just blows his flash, if you then immediately punt him into the backline and he dies there, that would be so funny. Actually, pretty close was Taeyoon to being able to steal that one away.
Yeah, W would love to at least take one of these Grubs away. We'll see if they try to go for an engage. It is a 4v3 on the top side of the map, and so with pushing them away, will be W actually getting one of the Grubs, and that might be big for a couple of reasons. Of course, it gives you that advantage, but also prevents one of those feats of strength from going over to JDG.
Grapes. Was it Monkey or was it Vampire who hit that blast card?
I know, so right now it's a very quiet game. I would love for the Huya observing team to just
Please.
just go find a replay of that.
Because I don't know who hit that blast
We need to launch
code.
some sort of investigation, some sort of report into that.
Yeah,
That was
exactly. If it was Monkey, that's hilarious. If it was Vampire who punts himself into the backline, yikes. You know, like, that would be. I mean, it would be funny. Jun actually going to get jumped right here. Vampire is in the area.
seeing some of the power of this Nefiri in the duels. However, Jund does a lot of damage in return. Both Conquerors have been procced, and now a big blast, shock blast from Ala is going to force Monkey down pretty low. He heals up rather nicely off the blast, off the Scuttle Crab, but here comes Ala, unrelenting in his aggression. With that to the skies, will force Monkey away and allow for Shun to pick up that Rift Scuttler and get level 6 first.
Yeah, really good to be able to just push everybody away. It's these small advantages that teams like JDG are able to pick up for themselves here. You can see it was all 100 gold in the advantage, now 200 gold in the advantage. It's just slowly but surely ticking up right now. All in all, it's come out to about 1,000 gold of a lead for JDG. They were able to pick themselves up 2 of the grubs, not all 3, not going to be too bad so far for WE, but you've also got your jungler in the area right now and a potentially pushing wave in the bottom lane if Pays and Missing want it to be able to start yourself up right here onto the Drake.
Okay. This is your angle. No flash on Scout. This is the opportunity to find a kill,
Nice.
and they do. Monkey uses the Nefiri ultimate to pick up first blood for WE.
There we go. That's what we wanted to see out of WE. Monkey being proactive, being able to pick up that kill, and also getting it for himself right here. Exactly what you want to have happen on the Nefiri. Of course, that does open up that Drake potential for JDG. They're going to be able to go grab that one for themselves right here. So it's not going to be traded for nothing. But still, punishing that lack of flash on Scout is exactly what we wanted to see.
Yeah, so that's one small little thing that we can potentially look for. Meanwhile, in the bottom lane, going in on the Pays just a little bit. This Vampire tries to make sure that this wave is going to be locked down nicely. True Shot Barrage will tongue Taeyu down to pretty low. And that will also allow for Shun to pick up this Dragon on the bottom side. So objectives as well as HP and CS on the bottom side of the map, still going well for JDG.
Absolutely, but still, it's something. We're getting to see some good aggressive plays out of WE. They didn't die, you know, in any of the issues with Vampire, although, having said that...
Might be a bit of curse here. There goes Vampire. Gets exhausted, gets Magnet Storm, still actually alive for a long time. Missing has to get away from the tower aggro, and now Shun in a bit of a sticky situation as well. Taeyeon still has a killer instinct, going to use it, but still gets knocked up. He flashes away, picks up 1 kill, Missing, should be a trade, but no! He barely gets away from tower range to allow for a double kill to go to Pays.
Oh, that was so close. One more auto attack was all that was needed for Taeyeon to be able to pick up that kill. It was well played on the counter to that dive, but JDG, like you said, still going to be able to pick up 2 kills, and they go exactly where you need them to be. Have a great cinematic look at Monkey ulting in right here onto Scout. This is fun. I love when we get these little extra camera angles during the replays. Very dramatic for the death of the victor right there. The game 2 for 2 in terms of the kills. The gold advantage still significantly in the favour of JDG. How early we are.
We're seeing more advantages for JDG displayed up in the top lane actually. Cube.
What?
Cube, do we know what the ability does, my friend? Maybe he was trying to anticipate a... You know what? No. Here's my cope. Here's my cope. Cube was anticipating a flash from Ala behind him to go for an E backwards or something. To go for the insect. As I say that, looks like Monkey might have found out Shun again. It's actually WE to pick up the feat of warfare here in this game. Pays issues some damage back, but with that numbers advantage with the jungler down, it should mean that WE get first dibs on these grubs. I
like that, Cope. I think you're right. You know? I don't think that was a misclick out of Cube. I think it just looks really funny, but you're probably correct in that one. Like I said, it is going to be all 3 of these grubs going on over to WE because they're able to pick up that kill onto Jun. But the tower in the bot lane falling incredibly low at the moment. With WE having the warfare...
Missing. Wow, he just, Giga Chad held his Hex Flash for like 3 seconds in vision, and still actually forced the flash out of Monkey, who was only able to pick up 2 of those 3 grubs, by the way, so that will be an even trade most likely after Shun has respawned and takes control of this top side river.
Oh, and this game, considering how much it was in the favor of JDG in the first one, WE, they're actually fighting back. Monkey looking really good right now, stepping up again, could potentially go for another play.
Hey. Keep sending it. Why not? Solar Flare going in on the Missing. He's getting crowd control locked to Oblivion, and Taeyeon will pick him up with the Acathian Rain. Grub still available as Jun wasn't able to take it down, and WE might be able to pick up all 3.
Monkey so proactive right here on the Neferi. I think it's been his best champion. This and the Skarner have been amazing looks right now for this guy, and showing up in this game number 2 versus JDG. As we've been saying, this is the first series that we're seeing out of WE. Really odd in terms of the way that this split has worked out. FPX, they've played 3 games already. WE, this is the first one that we're seeing from them. And so they're still going to be warming up into the split number 2. Good looking game from them so far. They had 6 good minutes in the first game. They've got at least 12.5 so far in this one.
Hey, if you double it each time, then eventually you're going to get to a win, right? So that's the hope for WE over the course of this series, over the course of this split. Of course, getting a good opportunity here to play in this Ascension group against some of the best teams that we have here in the LPL. So far, putting up a good fight against JDG here in game number 2. However, in terms of the gold, it still is JDG ahead by a fair margin, with that first tower also going over to Ala down in the bottom lane.
Yeah, they're just able to extend these advantages through the individual lanes. They're just up by quite a lot in terms of CS. I mean, look at the bottom lane CS gap. It's massive, about 30 at the moment, I think it was. They're now going to be pushing forwards right here, trying to take away this red buff from WE. Monkey's in the area, though.
Vampire going in once again, finds a stun only onto Missing. Smite secured for the red buff by Monkey. And Vampire should be able to escape with his life. Not enough closing the gap available for JDG. On the top side, Karis taking rather low by Scout. He's going to have to head back to base. Dragon up in 25 seconds. Will be just the second one here for JDG if they pick it up. So WE don't necessarily need to fight for it.
No, they could sit back and just allow WE to pick this one up, get themselves a little bit more scaling. They've got some great scaling on their composition as well. At the same time, though, kind of giving over anything, conceding anything to WE right here feels bad, because they've got themselves a sort of composition that spikes at 2 items very, very hard as well. They're going to be in a great spot. And even now, to be honest, with those eclipses completed onto both Cube and Monkey, they're in good spots to be able to go for fights if you open up the opportunity. Jun is at least going to start this Drake. He's going to be fully on vision, though, so I'm not sure he's going to want to go straight for this one right now without any awareness of where the rest of WE may be hiding. Vampire.
You know they're hiding because they always want to be fighting, as Vampire has been using that Hex Flash basically off of cooldown to try to look for some plays, playing very aggressively on this front line, basically treating his life like it doesn't really matter. But so far, it's actually him setting up kills for his team, as Karis finds the kill yet again onto Missing, who gets caught out for the 2nd time in a row and should allow for WE to pick up this Drake. Yeah, straight on over to the Drake, go WE, and we said potentially JDG could just abandon this one. Instead, they try to stand around to fight for it. I really like the positioning right there out of Vampire, actually. He kept walking down, making it look potentially like he was going for Jun, and then decides to E straight back up and pick up the kill. Really well played there, and getting themselves the Drake is going to be very nice. The gold lead's still in the advantage for JDG, though. WE, despite the fact that they're getting themselves some extra stats, good couple of kills and things like that, they're just not quite able to break past the CS leads that formed during the early laning phase. And it feels like WE have nearly abandoned the philosophy of laning phase at this point. All has been able to take a turret bot and top lane at this rate. Over 10 CS per minute. You can see it's at 170 right now as he heads back after a reset. And on the other side, Cube has like 110, so he's like 50 CS down against his laner. 20 to 30 is kind of the deficit in mid and bot, but it's become very clear that what WE want to do is try to overgroup maybe a little bit and try to find picks that could lead to them taking objectives and finding numbers advantages in fights.
Exactly. If they can find themselves those number advantages once they get into these team fights, it's going to make things a lot easier. They've also got the potential to try for a little bit of split pushing as well if they want to drag members of the opposition around. Right now, we've got the Herald up and available. Ages until the next Drake, ages until the Atakan. So it really is only going to be this Herald to try to fight for at the moment. As WE, I think you want to go for these fights. You're in a very strong position at the moment. You're kind of hitting those power spikes that you want to be. And Monkey's been playing this game out great so far. Can Vampire find the engage, though, to start things off?
Monkey, the only player on WE that's currently up in gold ahead of his lane of his respective opponent. A teleport is coming in from Ala. He's the strongest player in this game, I would say, by a decent margin. You can see it there with that accelerated shock blast. Already taking Taeyun down to half. Shun waiting to try to potentially steal away this Rift Herald. He's going to be a little bit far away, but might be here for a fight. Monkey's going to be able to collect the eye And now here comes the engage. Teleport comes in again from the bottom side. It's Scout joining the fray. But now WE can just fully collapse upon the flank of Ala and potentially just take this Jace down. It's Monkey picking up yet another kill as JDG were waiting around for way too long before they decided to make a move.
Yeah, that was really odd from JDG where they were just sat there waiting. Like you said, they may well be able to catch out onto either Cube or Vampire. I think Vampire's just going to fall right here, but it's really not going to be the end of the world. Maybe Monkey wants to re-engage.
And it seems like maybe W want to fight this. He's on the Cube right now. Vampire will be the sacrifice. Here comes the Magnus Throw from missing, but now Monkey's here. Taeyun in the back line as well. Could potentially go in with the Killer Instinct. Finds it on
There he is.
There goes Taeyun. He finds the shutdown. And WE are still alive in this one. Monkey poking with the dogs. And Cube still continuing to try to chase down Shun. Monkey, Monkey. He eats a win, becomes lightning. Shun can potentially eat and pick up a kill, but the Nefiri will not fall. WE are up 8-3 in kills right now, Bloxer.
And they're only down by about 1,000 gold. This game is still so incredibly close. And JDG make another mistake. I thought they were just going to be able to pick up that kill onto Vampire. But instead, WE, they don't want to abandon their boy. They go back to try for the play and actually are able to turn that one around. We end up watching the top half of this fight during the live moments. The really nice engage that we got out of Taeyun. What happens on the bottom side of this fight? This Monkey gets jumped right here and then ends up taking a huge chunk of damage. Jin flashes over the wall, doesn't quite manage to pick up that kill, and then, yeah, what we watched previously with all the action happening towards the top side. Taeyun, he was really, really quiet in game number 1. On this Kai'Sa, you can't do that. You can't try to sit back. You have to go in, and it was great to see him be aggressive in that one, actually use the ulti to go forwards, and helps to pick up another couple of kills for his team.
Taeyun and Paze, I'm sure they have interacted multiple times, both here, you know, in China, and also, you know, they were both coming up in the academy system in Korea together for a number of years as well, whether it was with Brion here for Taeyun or for Genji for Paze. So for these guys, getting an opportunity now to play in LPL, although they've had very different upbringings in terms of their careers in the LCK beforehand, but now on a similar level in terms of what their expectations are for this team, for their respective teams. JDG, despite being ahead in gold, making some uncharacteristic mistakes at this point. Like they were a little bit hesitant to go in around that Rift Herald. They either should have let it go and made a play on the other side of the map, or gone for the fight a little bit earlier. Speaking of fights, we almost got another one here as a nice arcane shift away from Paze to make sure he does not get hit by that public execution.
Getting hit by that would have been almost certainly a death sentence right there. We are, though, going to see this Rift Herald heading down into the bottom lane. This tower will fall. Are they going to be able to get another charge off of it? I would be surprised. Instead, no WE. They're just going to pull back. Drakeflow spawning in under 10 seconds time. Picking this one up would be huge right now. Hextech Soul, massive for whichever team is going to be able to pick this one up, especially with such heavy skirmishing, fighting-based compositions.
Here comes an ultimate here. Once again, Monkey going on to Scout. Nice buffer. We're with the untargetable. Here comes Cube as well on the Investa. And Scout is down. Missing will fall in addition. And Shun is stuck in a 1v4. And Paze can only watch as the jungler goes down. The Mystic shot's just not going to cut it. On the back end of things, it's a 1v1 kill for Ala as Taeyun will fall without burning a summoner spell. But WE winning the fight outright. And they'll be able to pick up another dragon.
Yeah, but still, JDG, they trade it. Like you said, the 1v1 kill from Ala. I don't know why Taeyun was caught out right there. Really unfortunate as the Kai'Sa to just get jumped fully by this very strong Jace. And they also get that tier 2 tower in the mid lane to JDG. They keep themselves in the advantage in terms of gold, but it feels like the objectives and the fights are just falling right here for WE. If they could just claw themselves into a little bit of a gold and as such item advantage, they'd be in complete control of this game.
We'll get the full replay here of Ala.
Does he
seemed like Taeyun was trying to find a flank and he just gets face checks.
Yeah, can't do that. Cannot do that. You can see at this point he's realized that he's just dead. Could potentially have tried to flash over that wall, run away, decided it was not going to be worth it. Can't do that. Can't face check a Jace, not when he's this strong. 2 items completed right here on Ala.
And that's the funny part about the way these fights have been going, is because Ala really hasn't been involved in many of them. He's either been doing his own thing, or picking up a solo kill, or getting any of the towers. And he's super fed. Look at him right now. 2K ahead of Cube, who honestly, in his own right, is having a good game. But he's 2,000 gold behind his lane opponent because he's gotten 3 towers. He's farming 12 to 13 CS per minute at this point. I mean, it's ridiculous right now.
but hasn't been able to translate that into helping out the rest of his team win, right? The first fight we see him get involved in, he gets jumped, and that's the beginning of the end of that fight for JDG. And the second one, yeah, he's able to pick up Taeyun on the backside of that fight, but isn't matched up with the rest of his team, and ends up just getting one solo kill, and everybody else ended up falling. Karis is going to get collapsed on right here. He does have friends in the area, though. Monkey on the way.
Okay, looks like he forces the jump out from Ala and then uses the between worlds to jump backwards. Now Monkey, as well as Taeyun and Vampire, hovering around the top side. Otacon right now spawned bottom, so they were just maybe looking for a potential dive onto the Jace, but will not be able to find it, so instead we'll just back away using those Hex Gates. By the way, Hex Tech Soul available for whoever is able to pick it up.
Yeah, being able to grab yourself that soul point as WE in 3 minutes time could be huge. Really allows them to dictate the pace of this game a little bit more. We do, of course, have ourselves the Baron spawning very soon, and Atakan is still up and available. Can be claimed by whichever team thinks it's a good idea to engage upon it. I think you're going to have to win a team fight first, so neither of these teams are far enough ahead to just go start this one up. And Atakan's always hurt. You really don't want to allow it to deal all the damage that your team then is behind once you engage in that full-on team fight. 2.5 minutes. Oh, never mind. JDG actually do feel confident to do this. They saw Monkey topside, to be fair. Yeah.
Why not just go for it? I mean,
yeah, very true. Monkey way out of position right here. You're going to get yourself one tower for it, maybe a second one. Is that worth it while as a trade? I'm not sure.
We'll see if they can get 2 here. That's big. They have 2 grubs. Yeah. They have 4 grubs, I should say, right now. So WE going to continue to push here with Karis and Monkey. They will likely take down this tier 2 tower. However, now it is just a bunch of blood petals going the way of JDG. So not even the false resets here. And so we're actually at a relatively even game state here, Blockster. Right now, the petals, again, the biggest difference maker in terms of how strong these teams are.
Oh yes, level 16 hit right here for Ala, so he is so far ahead right now. If Taeyun or Karis step to him at any point, they're just going to get one-tapped. Monkey 2 going to be very reliant on that E invulnerability to be able to keep him alive in the face of Ala. It's just going to be on him to be able to actually get involved in these team fights. The rest of his squad haven't been able to find success without him. So Ala joining up, going to be very impactful. Like I said though, couple of towers picked up in trade for the Atakan. I think that's just about going to be worthwhile for them. It's being able to pull them almost level in terms of gold, something they haven't been since the very start of this game.
You know, if you are WE, like, I understand wanting to trade like for towers in terms compared to fighting for something, but you take a look at the Victor. He's level 15. He's getting his Rod of Ages fully stacked up. All as well as now level 16, continue to stack up. These champions are starting to scale now, Blockster, and so WE, they've been playing well with the leads that they've been able to generate, specifically in their mid-jungle, but I think they've got to start to make some plays happen here, and in order to keep themselves in this position, keep that momentum flowing.
Yes, 100%. It's very much going to be on WE right now with those 2 items completed on the way to the 3rd to up the tempo of this game. They are in control of this one. They've been winning out on all of these team fights. Monkey's been great, but it's very hard to catch JDG out multiple times in a row. They've been able to do it pretty effectively so far. It's very much going to take playing around these objectives to actually draw JDG out. They've been very happy to just sit back so far for good reason, right? Their composition scales incredibly well, and once it starts hitting those 3 and then even 4 items, that's where JDG are all of a sudden in a massive advantage in this game. So with the Drake spawning in less than 10 seconds time, WE Vampire, oh no.
Yeah, getting caught out by one of the strongest members of JDG right now. With the Eclipse and the Aftershock, actually doesn't take a ton of damage. However, now with your support chunks, it might be a little bit hard to get to that Dragon Pit first, especially now if Missing is potentially trying to zone away Taeyun from the fight again. Shun the one that started up. Vampire spots him out. Monkey here as well. Dragon actually going to potentially be stopped here as Vampire goes all the way in onto Olive, but the Solar Flare doesn't connect. Here comes Cube off the teleport flank. They lock down the jungler and Shun will fall. Olive forced to flash away, but Taeyun will go over the Killer Instinct and pick up the shutdown. He'll die in response to the Pays, who's still full HP here on the Ezreal, but Monkey's going ballistic, but can Pays do it? He picks up one. Cube here to shut him down, and that's an ace for WE.
It's a complete mess of a team fight right now. Everybody split. At the beginning, Vampire's just in the mix, in the middle of everyone. But WE, they keep 2 members alive. They're not going to be able to grab the Drake on the back end of that one, but they will pick themselves up a ton of kills, some shutdowns, some towers as well. And this is exactly what they would have been looking for out of this team fight. WE, they don't want to be a speed bump on the way to more victories for JDG. They want to actually shut them down here. Vampire, yeah, he's so into the backline, but really, it's the damage that Monkey's doing, weaving his way through this fight, that's just huge. All the way through, constantly jumping in. The dogs are just dealing so much damage, and he lives for so long. You see here, flashes away, just about survives, goes back in, gets a ton of damage off, nearly even survives this entire fight, just takes one final little bit of auto-attack damage from Pays to die.
Yeah, that's a fantastic play for Monkey. We've said that this is the Monkey show, and that's what we're seeing a little bit here. And by the way, that dragon didn't end up going down, so we're going to go do it again. Shun, the one to continue to start this one off. Solar Flare does hit Ala. Will Monkey get in the pit? He does. Right now, JDG are peeling away from the Drake and instead looking for the fight. Vampire very low. Zenith Blade does not connect.
He gets it.
Worlds comes in.
Stolen!
And will be secured here by Shun, as that is now the second dragon of the game secured here for JDG. But Monkey will dash in and take down Missing. Pick up a reset. But here comes JDG. They've scaled into the late game. Karis will go down, and it is 3 dead for just Missing.
Oh, WE, they had themselves in such a good position, but they go for the re-engage onto that dragon. They don't even pick up the Drake for themselves, and they end up losing so many members that the Baron's now under threat of falling too.
And Monkey's dead. It is just Taeyun and Vampire. Vampire's been bold in terms of his decision-makings here in this game. I don't think he's this bold to go into a 2v4 with the Baron being taken down without a smite. So it will be JDG securing the big purple worm. And once again, they can breathe a little bit easier. Back up in the lead.
Oh, Monkey goes flying in onto this one. It's Vampire too, stepping up, taking just a huge chunk of damage. Really nice ulti there out of Shun. And he's able to just buy enough space and get the smite off as well. And then an attempt at a re-engage here out of Monkey. Yes, between Cube and Monkey you do a lot of damage, but watch Monkey's health bar. Now it's there, now it's not. Just gets popped, and you're melee right on top of all of these incredibly fed carries at this point for JDG. I just don't see that fight ever working out for WE.
Yeah, there's like a million things that went right on top of Monkey to help burst him down. Pays playing a big factor. He's now at 3 full items. Looking for a 4th with that last Whisper completed. And now JDG can try to break this game open a little bit more. Inner towers, the first to fall on the bottom side. Jungle camp secured, stolen away here from Monkey, who had himself a pretty steady go of income recently, but that's going to start to go away. You got to shout out WE here, right, Bloxer? They played these fights out, they played the skirmishes, but we did say going in that like once this Jace, once this Victor, once this Ezreal really come online, it's going to be much harder for WE to win any of these fights.
Exactly. These carries have now gotten to the point where they are so strong, you really need Monkey and Karis to one-tap somebody. Maybe even a public execution right here out of Cube to start things off. And also, in that previous fight, Taeyun just really wasn't able to get involved. Not like he was in the first Drake fight. The second one, he's kind of just stood there watching everything happen. You can't afford to be missing out on all of this damage that a 3-item Kai'Sa is able to do. See if he's going to be able to change that one in this next fight, as it looks like the top lane tier 2 tower is going to be the next focus for JDG. They've got everybody around in this area. They've also got a wave pouring down through the mid wave. They are in a good spot to keep the siege up at the moment.
This is the poke right now that is evident here with the Jace Ezreal that was selected early on in this draft here for JDG. True Shot Barrage chunks Taeyun down to 30%, I should say, or even less. And that is the tier 2 turret going over for free, and now the inhibitor certainly under threat.
Now let's see if they're going to be able to crack open the base right here. It's so tricky to actually step up here as WE and to clear out these Baron empowered cannon minions. Just going to be able to take down this tower. Now here comes the engage.
Only landing the engage on the Missing right now, so Pays still free to fire. That's going to shift forward and take down the Leona. Now it's the 5v4. Pays continuing to go in. Here comes Missing. not using the Magnus Storm just yet. Karis goes between worlds.
Monkey.
Going way
Nope.
too far forward all by himself, and that should be game. It looked good for WE for a little bit, but this is JDG that we're talking about, man. They're here for way more than just the victory against World Elite. They want the game, they want the series, they want to dominate the Ascension group, and with a 2-0 over WE, they will jump up to 2-0 overall in the standings.
Oh, WE.